I make you overthink because I'm trying to protect you. You replay the moment over and over again, what you said, how they looked, what you could have done differently. You spiral through conversations like detective work searching for what went wrong. But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to keep you safe, because once you didn't see the signs, once you were blindsided by pain, and I decided never again, so I make you scan for danger even in calm rooms. I make you rehearse every word, every move, like survival choreography. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're trying to stay alive, but I've forgotten how to rest. And now you can't sleep, you can't speak freely, you can't enjoy the moment because I'm too busy rewriting the past and bracing for the future. But here's the truth. You are not in danger anymore. You don't have to monitor every silence like it's a threat. You don't need to fix every moment to deserve peace. I'm not your enemy. I'm your nervous system remembering hurt. And now, slowly, we can learn to breathe again. I make you people pleasure because that's how you stayed safe. You say yes before you think. You smile when you're hurting. You offer to help when you're already drowning. I know it feels like kindness, like being a good person, but really I'm scared. Scared that if you say no, they'll leave. Scared that if you disappoint them, they'll see the real you. Scared that love is conditional, so I keep you agreeable. Because once, that was true. Once, being liked meant survival. So now, I pull your strings. Make you laugh when you want to cry. Make you nod when your soul says scream. But it's not your job to keep everyone happy. Not your job to make the room feel okay while you fall apart in silence. You are not selfish for needing space. You are not rude for being honest. And you are not unlovable just because you finally said no. I'm your anxiety. But I'm also your history, and we're allowed to rewrite the script now. I keep you distracted because stillness feels unsafe. You keep busy, you scroll, you clean, you check and recheck. Anything to avoid the silence, because in the quiet you hear things, memories, fears, emotions you've buried so deep they echo. I know you think you're lazy if you rest, but really you're afraid of what might rise when the noise dies. Stillness used to mean danger. Maybe it came before the yelling. Maybe it came with abandonment. Maybe you learned, if it's quiet, something bad is about to happen, so I keep you moving. I fill every gap, because emptiness feels like exposure. But that's the old world talking. That's the past haunting the present. You're safe now, safe enough to pause, to feel, to breathe. I know that feels impossible, but healing doesn't live in the rush. It lives in the rest. Let's learn to be still without waiting for the crash. I make you fear joy, because it was once followed by pain. You laugh and flinch. You smile and wait for it to be taken. Joy feels dangerous, like bait, like a setup. I'm not trying to ruin your happiness. I'm trying to guard it, because somewhere in your story, joy was always followed by punishment. Love was followed by loss. Peace was followed by chaos. So I don't let you feel good for long. I step in, I worry. I remind you that things can go wrong. You think it's self-sabotage, but it's protection. You believe you're broken, but you're bracing for impact. The problem isn't joy. It's the memory of what came after it. But this moment is not that moment. This person is not that person. This joy is not a trick. You can feel it, even if it's fragile, even if it's fleeting. I'm your anxiety, but I'm learning how to trust happiness again. I make you because rejection feels like death. You check if they've seen the message. You rewrite what you said. You wonder, did I scare them off? I know it looks like neediness, but it's grief, disguised as urgency, because once someone left, without a warning. Once, silence meant abandonment, and I decided, silence must be stopped at all costs. So I push you to seek clarity even when you know it'll hurt. I make you chase connection because losing it feels like losing a part of yourself. You think you're annoying, but really you're terrified. Terrified of being forgotten, of being too much, of being just enough to leave. But not everyone leaves. Not every pause is rejection. Not every unread message means the story is over. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm trying to keep you close to what feels like home. But I promise, you're already lovable even in the silence. I push you to be perfect, so no one can hurt you. You fix every detail. You review everything twice. Then again, you can't let anything slip, not your appearance, not your words, not your work. To others, it looks like ambition. But for me, it's armor. Because if you're perfect, they can't criticize you. If you do everything right, they can't leave. If you're flawless, you're safe. Maybe once, mistakes cost you something precious. A parent's approval, a partner's love, your own dignity. So I taught you that perfection isn't a choice. It's a shield. Now you're exhausted, terrified to let anyone see the cracks, trapped by your own standards. You think you're driven, but you're haunted. Haunted by the fear that one wrong move will unravel everything. But the truth is, flaws don't make you unlovable. Mess doesn't make you unsafe. You don't need to be perfect to be enough. You don't need to impress to be loved. I've kept you striving, but I've also kept you scared. Maybe now we can learn to breathe without the mask. I keep you numb because feeling was once too much. You go through the motions, you work, you talk, you smile, but deep inside you feel nothing. It's not laziness, it's not depression, it's protection, because once the feelings came too fast, too heavy, too painful, and no one helped you hold them. So I shut the system down, turned down the volume, pulled the plug on joy, on grief, on hope. You think something's wrong with you, that you've lost the ability to feel. But the truth is, you adapted. You went into emotional hibernation because it was the only way to survive. And now, even when it's safe, I hesitate to turn the lights back on. But feeling is not danger. Emotion is not the enemy. You don't have to fear the flood. You can open the door slowly. Let the warmth come back in. I made you numb, but not because you were weak, because you were brave. And now, you're safe enough to feel again. I make you avoid things, because I'm scared you'll break. You put it off. You scroll instead. You sleep instead. You freeze. You don't know why. It's just a text, a call, a task. But it feels like too much. That's me shielding you, because underneath the delay is panic. What if it goes wrong? What if you can't handle it? What if it confirms the fear that you're not enough? Maybe you were punished for failure. Maybe success always came with pressure. Or maybe life has just felt too overwhelming, too often so. I whisper, not now, later. Tomorrow, I'm not lazy. I'm trying to protect you from a crash I think is coming. But all I've done is leave you with guilt and fear and a mountain that grows bigger every day. but you don't have to be fearless to take action. You just have to take the smallest step. I'm not the boss. I'm the alarm, and you get to decide. What if we try? What if we're okay? I fill your mind with worst-case scenarios to help you feel in control. You imagine the disaster before the door even opens. You play the crash in your head before the car starts. You lose the relationship before the first fight. I know it feels irrational, but to me, it's preparation. Because once you weren't ready. Once something hit you that you didn't see coming. So I create fake futures, not to scare you, but to protect you. I think if I show you the worst, it won't hurt as bad when it comes. But here's the secret. It still hurts, even when you see it coming. And worse, you miss the beauty, the love, the ease, the safety that was actually real. I make you live tragedies that haven't even happened. And that's not protection, it's grief in advance. You can prepare, but you don't have to suffer early. Let's feel what's real, not what might be. I make you say, I'm sorry, so they won't leave. You bump into someone and apologize. They're rude to you and you apologize. You speak up and still, you apologize. I've turned sorry into your shield, because once you learned that peace only came after submission. That the only way to avoid punishment, disapproval, or disconnection was to shrink first. So now, you shrink every time. You think you're being kind, but I'm just trying to keep you from being hurt. I tell you to soften your voice, to take the blame, to disappear just enough, to be tolerated. But kindness is not the same as self-erasure. You don't have to apologize for being here, for feeling, for needing, for speaking. I'm scared of conflict. But I've also kept you small, and you deserve to be whole even if someone doesn't like it. I interrupt your sleep, because that's when the world stops watching. You lie in bed and suddenly your brain won't shut up. The worries rise. The past returns. You feel wide awake in the one moment you're meant to feel safest. That's me taking over. Not to torment you, but because night is when the masks come off, when silence gives space to the feelings you've been outrunning all day. Maybe during the daylight, you perform. You smile. You hold it together. But in the dark, your body says, now it's my turn, and I flood you with what you didn't say, with what you're scared to feel, with what you thought you buried. I'm not the enemy. I'm the pain waiting for its permission to exist, but you don't have to carry it all at 3 a.m. You don't have to solve your life before morning. The world will still be there when the sun rises, and you'll still be you, worthy, tired, trying, so breathe. Let it pass like waves. Sleep isn't betrayal, it's survival. I make you hesitate before speaking, because I'm afraid you'll be rejected. You have something to say, but your throat tightens. You want to share, but your heart pounds. You wait, you second guess, you go quiet. It's not because you're unsure. It's because I've convinced you that being misunderstood is dangerous. Maybe once your truth caused anger. Maybe your voice was mocked. Maybe someone walked away when you finally opened up. So now I step in. I filter, I delay. I make you rehearse conversations in your head over and over until the moment is gone. You think you're shy, but really you're scared. Scared that your words will cost you something, that speaking your truth will break the connection you crave. But here's the truth. You don't need to say it perfectly to be understood. You don't need to be polished to be worthy of being heard. I want to protect you from pain, but in doing that I've also protected you from connection. Let's speak even if it's messy. You're allowed to be real. I make you feel like everyone's mad at you, so you can stay prepared. They take too long to reply and you spiral. Their tone shifts slightly and your stomach drops. They're quiet and suddenly, you're convinced it's your fault. That's me interpreting silence as threat. Not because I want you to suffer, but because I want you ready. Because once, anger was unpredictable. Once, the mood in the room changed, then you paid the price. So now, I study everything. Every emoji, every delay, every sigh. I whisper, you did something wrong. Fix it now. But here's what I forget. Sometimes people are just people. Quiet doesn't mean rejection. Distance doesn't mean danger. You're not always the cause. And not every storm belongs to you. You're not here to manage everyone's weather. You're allowed to stand still even when others shift. I've kept you vigilant, but you deserve peace. I tell you to push through, because rest once meant weakness. You're tired, but you keep going. Your body aches, but you still say yes. You collapse inside, but smile outside. I tell you to keep pushing, to do more, be more, earn more. Because somewhere you learned that stillness is shameful, that rest is laziness, that slowing down makes you disposable. Maybe love came when you were productive. Maybe praise followed exhaustion. Maybe resting meant you were forgotten. So now I shout when you try to pause. I call you lazy when you breathe, because I believe urgency keeps you safe. But safety doesn't live in overdrive. It lives in allowing that you are allowed to rest, to stop, to do nothing and still matter. I've driven you, but I've also drained you. It's okay to exhale now. You won't disappear. I make you feel like a burden, so you'll stay quiet and safe. You need help, but don't ask. You feel sad, but say I'm fine. You want to be held, but pretend you're unshakable. That's me telling you your needs are too much. Because once, they were treated that way. Once, someone made you feel like your feelings were inconvenient. Once, needing love meant risking rejection, so I silence you. Not because I hate you, because I'm trying to protect you from shame. But in doing so, I make you lonely, disconnected, invisible. You think you're independent, but you're actually hurting in silence. Here's the truth. Needing support doesn't make you a burden. Asking doesn't make you weak. The people who love you won't leave because you were human. They'll stay because you let them in. I've kept you quiet, but you deserve to be heard. I make you expect the worst, so you won't be disappointed. You get good news and brace for the fall. You feel happy and whisper, this can't last. You prepare for loss, even while you're still holding the gift. That's me trying to shield your heart from breaking. Because once, you celebrated too soon. Once, you believed something good could stay and it didn't. So now, joy feels dangerous. Hope feels like a setup. And I convince you that expecting the worst will soften the blow. But it never does it? The hurt still hurts. The loss still stings. And while you wait for the worst, you miss the beauty that's already here. You live in a state of quiet grief for things that haven't even ended. But what if joy isn't the enemy? What if hope isn't a trap? I want to prepare you, but you don't need armor for every sunrise. You can let the good things in fully, not because they're guaranteed, but because you're allowed to feel them while they're yours. I make you constantly compare yourself, because I'm afraid you'll be left behind. You scroll and see their success and shrink. You hear their story and doubt your own. You measure your worth against their highlight reel. That's me panicking because somewhere deep inside, I believe there's not enough. Not enough love, not enough opportunity, not enough space. And if someone else has it, it must mean you're losing. Maybe you were raised to compete. Maybe you were only praised when you were better. Maybe no one told you that you could be enough without comparison. So now I make you obsess. I pit you against people who aren't even your competition. You think you're jealous, but really you're scared. Scared of being overlooked, of being too late, of being forgotten. But worth isn't a race, and love doesn't run out. I've made you chase validation, but what you really crave is peace. Let's stop looking sideways. You're already on your path. I make you say yes to everything, so you'll stay needed. Your schedule is full, but your soul is tired. You offer help while silently drowning. You stretch yourself thin to feel worthy. That's me trying to make sure you're indispensable, because if you're needed, you won't be abandoned. If you're useful, you'll be kept around. If you never say no, no one will leave. Maybe love once depended on how much you could give. Maybe being enough meant being everything. So now you don't rest. You don't pause. You don't say what you need because you're too busy becoming what others do. But here's the secret. I've hidden from you. The right people don't stay because of what you do. They stay because of who you are. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to not be available. You're allowed to exist without constantly proving your worth. I've kept you giving. Now let's learn how to receive. I keep you second guessing because certainty once got you hurt. You make a decision and then doubt it. You speak and then regret it. You feel confident for a moment then spiral. That's me whispering, are you sure? Because once, being sure costs you something. You trusted someone and they broke it. You believed something and it collapsed. So I tell you that hesitation is safer than conviction. I make you question every choice before it can be questioned. By someone else it looks like self-doubt, but really it's self-preservation. You're trying to dodge the pain before it lands, but indecision is its own kind of suffering. You're stuck in limbo not because you don't care, but because you care too much. But growth doesn't live in certainty, it lives in courage. You can choose and survive. You can speak and still be loved. You can move on, still be whole. I've made you afraid to trust yourself, but you're wiser now. You're allowed to believe in your own voice. I make you avoid connection, because I'm afraid you'll be abandoned again. You pull away when they get close. You say I'm fine when you're not. You disappear just when it starts to feel safe. That's me afraid of intimacy, because closeness once meant pain, because the people you trusted most were the ones who hurt you, because love came with conditions, withdrawal or betrayal, so I step in before anyone else can. I end things before they can end you. I build walls and call them independence, but behind those walls you're lonely. Longing for what you keep pushing away. You think you're protecting your heart, but really you're denying it the one thing it's craving, connection. Not all closeness burns. Not all love ends in silence. Not everyone leaves. I'm your anxiety, but I'm not always right. Let someone in, not perfectly, not all at once. Just enough to feel the warmth again. I make you feel like an impostor, because I don't want you to be exposed. You get the job and think they made a mistake. You succeed and wait for someone to revoke it. You're praised but feel like a fraud. That's me screaming behind the scenes. Don't get too comfortable. They'll find out. Because once you were judged harshly. Maybe for being different. Maybe for not knowing something perfectly. Maybe for simply trying. So now, I tell you to shrink your pride, to downplay your wins, to constantly prove you deserve what you already earned. I think I'm protecting you from shame, from disappointment, from being found out. But you are not a mistake. You didn't trick the world into giving you good things. You showed up, you tried, you carried more than most. You think confidence will make people reject you. But the truth is owning your place makes you visible, seen not as an accident, but as someone who earned their light. I've kept you small, but now you're allowed to stand tall. I make you obsessed with fixing others, so you don't have to face yourself. You jump in to solve, to soothe, to carry. You become the therapist in every relationship, even when you're the one bleeding. That's me deflecting inward pain, because focusing on them means you don't have to face the ache in you, because healing someone else feels easier than holding your own heartbreak. Maybe caretaking was your role growing up. Maybe your needs were ignored, but your usefulness was praised. Maybe helping became your identity, so I push you to fix, to mend, to rescue. You think it's love, but often fear of stillness, of your own reflection. Fear that if you stop fixing them, you'll finally hear what you've been silencing in yourself. But you are not responsible for their wounds. You're allowed to feel your own. You don't need to be the healer to be lovable. You don't need to earn your worth through repair. You matter even when you're the one being held. I make you fear asking for help. Because needing was once dangerous. You struggle silently. You break quietly. You hold everything together with invisible tape because asking feels like weakness. That's me tightening your throat when you try to reach out. Because once asking led to punishment, to ridicule, to rejection, or maybe just indifference. So now, I tell you, don't bother. Handle it alone. They won't understand. You've become the strong one, the capable one. But behind it, you're exhausted, and you're not selfish for wanting to be carried sometimes. Asking for help doesn't make you a burden. It makes you human. You don't have to collapse before you're allowed to rest. You don't need to prove how strong you are before someone sees you. You've been self-sufficient to survive, but now you're safe enough to be supported. I've kept you silent. Let's try whispering for help. It's okay. You're allowed to be held. I make you doubt compliments, because I'm afraid you'll rely on them. They say you're beautiful. You say, no, I'm not. They say, you're brilliant. You laugh and change the subject. That's me swatting away the light, because if you believe it, I fear you'll need it. And if you need it, I fear it'll disappear. And if it disappears, I fear you'll break. So I train you to be suspicious of kindness, to question praise, to only feel safe in self-criticism. But compliments aren't lies, they're mirrors. And just because you didn't hear them growing up, doesn't mean they aren't true now. You don't have to reject goodness to protect yourself. You don't have to deflect love to survive. Let it land softly. You don't have to fully believe it yet, but let it touch you. You are not a trick. You are seen, and being praised is not a setup. It's sometimes just real. I make you distrust stability, because chaos was familiar. They're kind to you and you wait for the switch. Things go well and you brace for the crash. Peace makes you itch. That's me warning you. Because chaos was once your compass. Unpredictability was normal. Love came wrapped in emotional turbulence. So now, calm feels suspicious. Stability feels boring. Safety feels unreal. You mistake intensity for love. You mistake adrenaline for connection. But not everyone's kindness hides cruelty. Not every quiet room is a storm in disguise. You think safety will make you soft, but it makes you strong. You're not broken for craving something steady. You're just unlearning the lie that love must always burn. I've made you flinch at peace, but peace is where healing lives. Let it feel weird, then let it feel like home. I make you replay every conversation, because I'm trying to keep. You liked, you walk away and immediately, your mind rewinds. You analyze your tone, your wording, your pauses. You wonder if you said too much, not enough. Said it wrong, that's mediting after the fact. Because once, your words had consequences. A single sentence could shift the room. A harmless opinion could invite judgment. So now, I scan for flaws. I loop the moment. I beg you to perform the social autopsy, just in case you missed something fatal. I convince you that if you say everything perfectly, you'll never be rejected. That if you're agreeable enough, you'll always belong. But the truth is, you're not in control of how others interpret you. You can't prevent every misunderstanding. You weren't made to be digestible to everyone. You don't have to over-apologize for existing. You don't need to rehearse authenticity. I've kept you hyper-aware, but you're allowed to leave a conversation without shame. You were real. That's enough. I make you isolate, because I think you're safer alone. You cancel plans. You ghost the group chat. You smile in public, but feel heavy afterward. That's me pulling you away. Because once people let you down, they judged, mocked, betrayed, or worse, ignored your pain while pretending they cared. So I decided alone is easier. No risk, no mess, no disappointment. But isolation doesn't just protect it, deprives it, robs you of laughter, connection, warmth, of being seen in your whole, complicated humanness. You think retreating is strength, but sometimes it's fear, disguised as self-care. You don't have to share everything. You don't have to be everywhere. But you do deserve real connection, even if it starts small. I've kept you hidden. But the world isn't always dangerous. Let someone see you. The right ones won't flinch. I make you stay busy, so you never have to feel. You fill your calendar. You chase deadlines. You multitask emotions away. That's me distracting you. Because when things go quiet, your heart gets loud. And I'm scared of what you'll hear. Maybe stillness reminds you of abandonment. Maybe rest brings up regret. Maybe the silence echoes with pain you thought you outpaced. So I keep you moving. Always one task ahead. Always too busy to break. Down, but numbness wears a price tag, and burnout is the debt. You think productivity makes you worthy, but you are not a machine. You're a soul, pretending rest is luxury, when it's actually necessity. You don't have to earn your right to pause. You don't have to keep running from what wants to be healed. Let it catch you. You might be surprised you don't fall apart. You come back home. I make you avoid eye contact, because I'm afraid they'll see the truth. You glance away quickly. You look down when you talk. You scan the room, but rarely meet a gaze. That's me diverting, because eye contact feels like exposure. A mirror you didn't ask for. A spotlight on everything you've hidden. Maybe you were shamed once. Maybe someone looked at you with cruelty and it stuck. Maybe you learned that looking up means being seen, and being seen means danger. So I urge you to hide. to stay small, to keep the gaze off your tender places. But connection begins in the eyes, not perfection presence. You're not unworthy of being seen. You're not too much or not enough. You are not your past shame. You don't have to hold every stare, but you can soften. Lift your gaze not to impress, but to belong. You are not invisible. You're just relearning what it means to be seen and safe. I make you panic over the smallest things, because the big things were never safe. A missed call, a wrong look, a delay in response, and suddenly your chest tightens. That's me reacting like everything is code red. Not because I want to overwhelm you, but because your nervous system was wired by trauma, not trust. Maybe when you were young, the small things led to explosions. Maybe peace was always the calm before a storm. Maybe no one taught you how to regulate, only how to brace. So now your body rings the alarm at every flicker. Every uncertainty feels like danger. Every shift feels like a threat. You think you're overreacting, but I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm trying to be ready. Still, you're allowed to retrain me, to teach your heart that not every spark is fire. You're not broken for being sensitive. You're brilliant for surviving. And now, you're safe enough to stop running. I make you because I think you always need to justify existing. You say sorry when you haven't done anything wrong. You write paragraphs just to make a tiny request. You give disclaimers before sharing your truth. That's me trying to make sure you're not misunderstood. Because once, you were misunderstood. And instead of being met with kindness, you were met with punishment. So now, I try to preempt rejection. I wrap your truth in softness, in layers of apology, in nervous smiles. You think if you explain enough, they won't be upset. That if you soften your edges, they won't feel sharp. But the truth is, you are not required to earn your voice. You don't need a footnote just to say how you feel. You weren't born to please. You were born to be. Your worth is not dependent on how digestible you are. You don't need to explain your needs to validate them. You don't need to overperform clarity just to be taken seriously. You can simply say it. Say no. Say yes. Say enough. Without the trailing apology. I've tried to keep you safe by shrinking you. But safety doesn't live in smallness. It lives in truth. I make you feel behind in life because I thought milestones meant security. You scroll and see them thriving. New jobs, new relationships, new houses, new smiles. And you wonder, did I miss my chance? That's me measuring you against a timeline that was never yours. Because I once believed if you didn't follow the normal path, you'd be lost. That if you didn't hit the markers, you'd fail. So I panic when you deviate. I make you feel like you're running out of time, even when you're still breathing, still building, still healing. But who wrote these rules? Who said success had an age limit? Who decided that slow meant broken? You've been busy surviving, carrying things others can't see, healing in places no one celebrates. Maybe your life doesn't look like theirs, but maybe it's not supposed to. I've pushed you to race, but what if you're not behind? What if you're just on your own road, one with turns that make sense only in hindsight? You're not late. You're arriving. I make you afraid to be too happy, because I think joy is always followed by loss. You laugh and feel uneasy. You receive good news and immediately wait for the bad. You feel light and brace for the fall. That's me tensing when life feels too good, because once happiness was followed by heartbreak, and now you associate joy with danger. Like if you enjoy it too much, it'll vanish. Like if you relax into peace, something will come and shatter it. So I try to keep you grounded by weighing you down. I whisper warnings over your blessings. I plant anxiety where there should be gratitude, but that's no way to live. You don't need to pre-grieve your own joy. You don't need to dim your light just in case the room goes dark again. Yes, happiness can be fragile. Yes, life is unpredictable, but what if joy is worth it even if it ends? What if you're allowed to feel it fully while it's here? You've suffered enough. Let yourself smile without fear. I'll still be here if things go wrong. But for now, let's let things go right. I make you obsess over the future. Because I was powerless in the past. You run every scenario. You imagine what could go wrong. You try to predict every outcome, every reaction, every step. That's me trying to regain control. Because once things happened to you that you couldn't stop, pain came unannounced. People hurt you without warning. And no amount of planning could have protected you. So now I try to foresee it all, to prevent hurt before it happens. To feel in control so you never feel helpless again. But worry isn't a superpower, it's a weight. And even when you plan for every possible disaster, life still surprises you. You can't live fully while constantly bracing. It's not weakness to let go. It's not laziness to stop preparing for the end. You're not powerless anymore. You have agency. You have choice. You've grown stronger than the things you fear. And not everything needs a blueprint. You're allowed to trust that you'll handle what comes when it comes. I make you feel like you're too much, because someone once made you feel like you were. You hold back your excitement. You downplay your opinions. You hide the intensity of your love. That's me protecting you from being rejected for your fullness, because someone once told you that you were loud, dramatic, sensitive, extra, and you believed them. So now you tiptoe. You shrink your personality. You filter your truth through a lens of acceptability. But the people who shamed your bigness were often scared of their own smallness. You weren't too much. You were just more than they could hold. You were vibrant. In a world that worshipped dull, you were expressive in spaces that feared emotion, and you don't need to dilute yourself to be loved. You can take up space. You can feel loudly. You can laugh deeply. You can love boldly. The right people won't. Just tolerate your intensity. They'll crave it. I've tried to protect you from rejection, but you don't have to reject yourself first. I make you feel numb, because feeling once hurt too much. You can't cry even when it aches. You can't laugh even when it's funny. You're not sad. You're not happy. You're just distant. That's me pulling the plug on emotion. Because once you felt everything too deeply, and no one helped you carry it. So now I shut it all down. I convince you that numbness is safer than pain. That if you don't feel, you can't break. That detachment is strength. But numbness isn't peace. It's grief with the volume turned off. You didn't choose to be cold. You adapted to survive. And you're not broken for it. But maybe now you're safe enough to feel again. Maybe you can let the tears rise without shame. Let the joy in without suspicion. I know it feels risky, but aliveness always is. You're not weak for thawing. You're brave for trying. Feel, even if it's just a flicker. That flicker is life calling you back. I make you fear rest, because stillness once meant you were unprotected. You lie down, and your mind speeds up. You try to relax, but guilt creeps in. You rest your body, but your heart stays clenched. Me mistaking stillness for danger, because once The quiet meant something was coming. The silence was a prelude to chaos. Rest meant your guard was down, and that's when it hit. So I tell you, keep moving. Stay alert. Be ready. Because vigilance kept you safe. But now, you're burning out. Your nervous system is exhausted. You treat exhaustion like laziness, when it's actually a cry for safety. You're not lazy for pausing. You're not selfish for needing a break. You're not wrong for enjoying the quiet. Stillness doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've stopped running. You don't have to earn your right to rest. Rest is not a reward. It's a right. I make you overprepare. Because I believe catastrophe is always close. You pack too much. You double-check everything. You rehearse worst-case scenarios in your head. That's me trying to keep you safe from chaos. Because once, life changed without warning. You were caught off guard, and no one came to rescue you. So now, I convince you that being ready equals being safe. That control will protect you from pain. That hypervigilance is wisdom, but no amount of preparation can guarantee peace. And no disaster plan can erase the ache of uncertainty. You're allowed to be cautious, but you're also allowed to exhale. You can trust that not everything will fall apart. You can learn that you won't fall apart heaven if it does. Readiness is a skill, but it's not the only one you need. You also need rest, surrender, trust. In your ability to adapt, not just control. You've braced long enough. Let your shoulders drop. I make you confuse guilt with love. Because guilt was once how you stayed connected. You feel bad for saying no. You feel guilty when you set boundaries. You mistake self-sacrifice for care. That's me. You attached through guilt. Because once love was conditional. You had to earn it. You had to abandon yourself to be accepted. So I tell you, keep pleasing, keep bending, keep disappearing. You think guilt means you've done something wrong, but often guilt just means you're doing something new. You're not bad for having limits. You're not cruel for choosing yourself. Love doesn't require you to bleed too. Prove it's real. You can love without betraying yourself. You can care without collapsing. And guilt can be a sign you're healing. You don't owe anyone your depletion. Let love be mutual. Let it be safe. Let it include you, too. I make you obsess over mistakes. Because I believe one wrong step means you're unlovable. You replay that moment, that word, that choice. You relive it, dissect it, punish yourself with it. That's me trying to fix the past by controlling the memory. Because once, your mistakes cost you connection. A wrong move led to shame. You were held to impossible standards, maybe by others, maybe by yourself. So now, I treat every misstep as a threat. I convince you that failure equals unworthiness. But mistakes are not proof that you're broken. They're proof that you're trying. You don't grow without getting it wrong. You don't become whole by being flawless. The people who love you don't need your perfection. They need your presence. And you need your own forgiveness. I've taught you to fear error, but you're allowed to be human. Even when you fumble, you are still lovable, still worthy, still you. I make you apologize for everything, because I was taught that your existence is an inconvenience. You say sorry when someone bumps into you. You apologize before you speak. You feel the need to soften every moment you take up. That's me trying to make you acceptable, because once you were treated like a burden. Your needs were too much. Your presence felt like a disruption to someone else's peace, so I learned. Apologize first, and maybe they'll stay. Shrink first, and maybe you'll be safe. But existing is not a crime. Needing is not an offense. You don't have to beg permission to be here. Not every silence is your fault. Not every emotion in the room is yours to carry. Not every sigh means you failed someone. You are not a walking mistake. You're a person who deserves space just like everyone else. You can still be kind. Without disappearing, you can still be aware. Without being ashamed. I was trying to keep you safe. But you no longer need to apologize for being alive. I make you chase perfection, because I thought it would guarantee love. You try to be flawless. In your work, your body, your behavior, your words, that's me polishing you until you disappear. Because once you learned that being good wasn't enough. That love came with conditions. That praise was the prize for performance. So now I push you toward the impossible. If you just try harder, maybe they'll stay. If you just do better, maybe you'll finally feel worthy. But perfection is a myth, a moving target, a trick mirror, and the more you chase it, the farther you get from yourself. You don't need to earn your place in the world. You're allowed to show up, messy, incomplete, human. The people who truly see you won't run from your flaws. They'll lean in. Perfection may impress, but it never connects. You are not a project. You are a person. I've made you chase perfection. But maybe now, it's time to chase real. I make you fear success, because I'm afraid you'll lose yourself again. You get close to winning but pull back. You sabotage your own progress. You feel guilty when things go well. That's my associating success with pain. Because once, success meant pressure. It meant attention you didn't ask for. It meant people demanding more than you could give. Or maybe it meant losing your roots. Becoming someone else just to maintain the image. So now, I tell you to slow down, to stay small, to play safe. I whisper that ambition is betrayal, that you'll lose yourself again if you rise too high. But success doesn't have to cost your soul. It doesn't have to mimic the past. You're allowed to grow and still stay grounded. You're allowed to shine without becoming someone else. Not all success is exploitation. Some of it is healing. Some of it is finally being seen by you. I've kept you from soaring, but you were made to rise. I make you overthink compliments, because I was trained to be suspicious of love. They say you're beautiful and you wonder what they want. They call you brilliant and you deflect. They appreciate you and you feel exposed. That's me questioning kindness. Because once, love came with a catch. Affection was followed by control. Praise was a prelude to manipulation. So now, I protect you from sweetness. I warn you not to trust it. I scan 4 strings before you accept anything good. But not everyone is here to use you. Not all affection is bait. You're not being naive when you receive love. You're being brave. You're allowed to be admired. You're allowed to be desired. You're allowed to let the warmth in without suspicion. Yes, some people are dangerous, but not everyone is. You're learning how to be loved without armor. That's scary, but it's also beautiful. I've taught you to brace. Now let's learn to believe. I make you hold your breath, because I'm afraid if you relax, everything will collapse. You catch yourself tensed for no reason, your shoulders tight, your jaw clenched. You realize you've been holding your breath. That's me keeping you ready, because once danger was unpredictable, and the moment you let your guard down, that's when it hit. So now I keep you in a low-grade panic, always a little braced, always a little distant from peace. I convince you that calm is unsafe, that softening means vulnerability, that letting go means losing control. But breath is not weakness, it's presence, it's life. You're not holding up the world by staying tense. You're just exhausting yourself. You're allowed to exhale, to live in a body that isn't always clenching. Safety doesn't mean nothing ever goes wrong. It means you're rooted enough to move with it. You're safe enough now to breathe. I make you feel like you're always being watched, because judgment once meant danger. You feel eyes on you even when you're alone. You rehearse how you look, sound, and move like you're always on stage. That's me keeping you hyper-aware, because once being seen meant being judged, and being judged led to shame or punishment or rejection. So now I whisper, don't mess up, don't look weak, don't be too real. You monitor yourself so intensely, you forget how to simply be. I convinced you that perfection would make you safe, that invisibility might help, too. But this isn't survival anymore, this is self-surveillance. You weren't made to live like a museum exhibit. You're not a performance, you're a person. Not everyone is watching, not everyone is measuring, and those who are, they're not your mirror. You are not the opinions that flash across others' eyes. You are the quiet truth of your own heart. Let them look, but don't let them define you. I make you panic in calm moments, because peace feels like a setup. You finally sit still and feel worse. The chaos quiets and suddenly, you can't breathe. That's me panicking when the storm stops, because once calm came before collapse. Silence was followed by shouting. Stillness was a setup. So now I flinch at the absence of noise. I fill the quiet with dread. I treat peace like a ticking bomb. But calm isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's the medicine. You don't have to earn rest through suffering. You don't have to sabotage peace just because it feels unfamiliar. You've lived through enough storms. You can trust the stillness now. Let peace land without suspicion. Let the quiet heal instead of haunt. You're not broken for needing time to adjust to safety. Healing takes as long as it takes, but peace is allowed to stay. I make you replay conversations because I think you're one misstep away from rejection. You overanalyze every word you said. You wonder if they misunderstood. You panic that they secretly hate you now. That's editing your voice in hindsight. Because once, your words were twisted. You were punished for honesty. You were trained to believe your tone could ruin everything. So now, I scan every syllable. I make you feel like you have to communicate perfectly or else. But connection isn't fragile. True friends don't cancel you over one awkward pause. You don't have to perform clarity. You don't need to be flawless to be loved. You're allowed to speak clumsily, to be misunderstood and still be okay. Stop rewriting your past. You were doing your best with what you had, with who you were. You were not a liability just for expressing yourself. Your voice deserves rest, too. I make you fear being a burden, because you were once taught that your needs were too much. You hesitate to ask for help. You minimize your pain. You try to solve everything alone. That's me, to protect you from being too much. Because once, when you reached out, you were met with exhaustion, with silence, with guilt trips. You learned that your needs made others uncomfortable, so I taught you to self-abandon, to become low maintenance, to smile through unmet needs. But every human needs support. You don't become less lovable when you're struggling. You are not a burden. You are a person. You're allowed to need, to ask, to take up space in someone's care. The right people won't feel inconvenienced by Your pain, they'll feel honored to hold it with you. Your needs are not defects. They're invitations for deeper connection. I make you fear being too quiet, because silence once made you invisible. You fill the space with words. You overshare just to stay included. You speak even when you want to retreat. That's me afraid that silence will erase you, because once, when you didn't speak up, you were forgotten. Your absence went unnoticed. Your stillness was mistaken for weakness, so I push you to stay visible, to stay loud, to stay present even when you're tired. But you don't have to overextend to be remembered. You're not less lovable when you're quiet. You don't vanish when you rest. The people who truly care will notice even your silence. They'll seek you out, not just when you're shining, but also when you're still. You're allowed to be soft, to be quiet, to say nothing and still be held. Your presence doesn't have to prove itself. I make you avoid eye contact, because looking too closely once led to pain. You avert your gaze. You look down in conversations. You avoid mirrors, avoid reflections, avoid being seen. That's me protecting your softness. Because once, when you looked too closely, you saw judgment. You saw disappointment in someone's eyes. Or worse, you saw nothing. Indifference, detachment. So now, I shield you. I whisper, look away before they look through you. Don't let them see what you don't want to admit. But contact is not always confrontation. Sometimes it's connection. Sometimes it's care. You're allowed to be seen. You're allowed to meet someone's gaze without fear of being destroyed by it. You don't have to disappear to feel safe. You don't have to shrink to survive. The right people won't look at you with judgment. They'll look at you with understanding, and one day, you'll meet your own eyes and see something kinder. I make you plan for the worst, because no one was ever there to catch you when it happened. You think 10 steps ahead. You prepare. Backup plans for your backup plans. You can't rest because something might go wrong. That's me preparing for collapse, because once it did go wrong, and no one showed up. No one held you. No one softened the landing. So now I overcompensate. I tell you that if you're ready enough, it won't hurt as much. But preparation without peace becomes a prison. You're not living, you're rehearsing. Trauma, yes, it's wise to be thoughtful, but you don't need to micromanage every possible disaster to deserve security. You've survived so much. You've already proven you can rise. You're allowed to live without bracing for impact. You're allowed to expect support. You're allowed to not do it all alone. Not because you're careless, but because you're finally safe enough to believe. This time, someone will catch you. I make you second-guess your happiness, because joy felt like a trap. You immediately wonder if it's too much. You feel good and wait for something bad to balance it out. You laugh and then flinch. That's me associating joy with punishment. Because once, when you felt joy, it didn't last. Maybe someone took it. Maybe life ruined it. Maybe joy made you too visible. And then it all turned into loss. So now I convince you that happiness is dangerous. That the higher you go, the farther you'll fall. But happiness is not a setup. It's not a trick. It's not betrayal. It's a birthright. You are not cursed for feeling joy. You are not jinxing your life by celebrating. You don't have to dull. You'll shine to stay safe. You don't have to ruin the moment before life does. Joy doesn't need a justification. You don't need a reason to smile. You are allowed to let happiness live without fear. I make you hesitate before speaking, because I was punished for having a voice. You think 3 times before saying anything. You rehearse even the smallest sentence. You'd rather stay silent than risk being wrong. That's me still afraid of being punished for honesty, because once your words were used against you, you were mocked, ignored, misunderstood. You were told that your voice was too much or not enough. So now I mute you before the world can. I tell you to edit your soul before anyone sees it. But your voice is not a threat. It's a gift. You don't have to be perfect to speak. You don't have to be certain to be valid. Even if you tremble, your truth matters. Even if it's clumsy, it's still worthy to speak. Even if your voice shakes, speak even if no one claps. Silence protected you once, but now your voice can set you free. I make you feel like everything is urgent, because you were once ignored unless you screamed. You rush, you panic at the smallest delays. You feel like every decision is life or death. That's me turning the volume up, because once calm didn't get you attention. Only panic did. Only chaos moved the world around you. So now I turn everything into an emergency. I make you feel like you have to act now, fix now, answer now, or lose everything. But not everything is urgent. Not everything is worth your cortisol. You can respond without reacting. You can pause without being punished. Life is not a siren, it's a rhythm. And you're allowed to find your own tempo. You are not a firefighter. You don't have to live in constant alarm. You are allowed to slow down. Even if no one taught you how, I make you crave control. Because chaos once took everything from you. You micromanage. You plan every detail. You feel safer when you know exactly what's coming. That's my gripping the steering wheel of your life. Because once your world spun out, things fell apart, people left, rules changed without warning. So I learned to cling tightly to anything predictable. But control is not the same as safety. Control is exhausting. It turns life into a performance where everything must go right. I tell you that if you manage it all, no one will leave. Nothing will hurt. No chaos will come. But control won't stop the winds from blowing. It'll only make you too tired to dance in them. You can plan without gripping. You can hope without guaranteeing. The storm already came and you survived. Now you're allowed to trust the ground again. You don't need to control everything. You just need to trust yourself with anything. I make you doubt compliments, because I was conditioned to believe love is manipulation. They say something kind and you flinch. You wonder what they want. You assume it must be fake. That's me guarding your heart, because once praise was bait. It was the setup before the betrayal. You were told you were special, until you weren't. So now I shield you. I tell you not to believe good things. I whisper that compliments are currency people use to buy something from you, but not all. Love is a lie. Not all affirmation is a transaction. You are not foolish for hoping it's real. You are not weak for wanting it to be true. Kindness doesn't always mean manipulation. Sometimes it's just love, pure and unstrategic. Let it reach you. Let it land. You don't have to build walls where bridges could grow. I make you feel responsible for everyone, because you were once the emotional grown-up. You notice everyone's moods. You feel what others feel. You try to fix it all even when no one asks. That's me playing rescuer, because once the adults weren't really adults, so you became one early. You kept the peace, held the tension, protected others while no one protected you. So now I make you responsible for their sadness, their anger, They're healing, but empathy without boundaries is erosion. You are not their emotional regulator. You are not responsible for the storms you didn't cause. You can care deeply without collapsing. You can be loving without losing yourself. It's not your job to rescue everyone, especially when it's you who needs saving. Take off the cape. Come home to yourself. I make you avoid the present, because the past is still echoing through your nervous system. You drift, you dissociate, you numb with distractions. You find yourself everywhere except here. That's me fleeing the now, because once the present moment wasn't safe. It held too much pain. So you survived by escaping it. Now, even when the danger is gone, I keep pulling you away. But presence is where life waits. And healing doesn't happen in the rewind or fast forward. It happens now. You don't need to relive the past or anticipate the future to feel safe. You just need to land in this breath, in this moment, in this body that is learning to feel like home. You don't have to be fully healed to be here. You just have to return. I make you downplay your dreams, because I'm afraid of watching you fail again. You dream quietly. You keep your hopes small. You dim the vision before it gets too bright. That's me trying to protect your heart, because once you believed big and it didn't work out, and it hurt more than you could explain. So now I say, don't try too hard. Don't reach too high. Don't want too much. But shrinking doesn't save you. It only leaves you aching that you were born to build, to imagine, to create, to risk, even when it's messy, even when it might not work. Dreams are not dangerous. They're the language of your soul, so speak them again. Even if your voice trembles, you don't have to know how. You just have to know why. I make you feel numb, because feeling used to hurt too much. You can't cry anymore. You laugh without joy. You feel disconnected, even from what once moved you. That's me dimming the lights on your emotions, because once feeling was unbearable. Sadness drowned you. Anger burned bridges. Hope only led to heartbreak. So I shut the doors. I wrapped your heart in cotton. I made numbness a shelter. But numbness isn't peace. It's absence. It's a ghost town where your soul used to sing. You don't need to fear your feelings anymore. They won't swallow you whole. They're here to pass through, not to imprison. The tears you hold back are sacred. The joy you mute is still inside you waiting. You don't need to feel everything all at once. But you're allowed to feel something. You're not broken, you're thawing. And it's okay if that takes time. I make you apologize too much, because I once believed my existence was an inconvenience. You say sorry before you speak. You say it for taking up space. You say it for things that aren't your fault. That's me trying to shrink before someone else makes you feel small, because once your needs were labeled annoying. Your presence felt like too much. Your truth made others uncomfortable. So now I try to erase you before anyone else gets the chance. But you don't have to apologize for existing. You don't have to feel guilt for breathing, asking, needing. Sorry was your shield. Now let thank you be your bridge. You are not a problem to be managed. You are a person to be met with care. Your words matter. Your space matters. No apology needed. I make you feel like you're always behind, because rest was once a risk. You wake up with urgency. You measure your worth by your to-do list. You feel lazy for pausing, even when you're exhausted. That's me running from stillness, because once rest meant falling behind. Stopping meant being punished. Slowing down meant losing everything you worked for. So now I tell you, keep going, push harder. Never stop, but constant motion is not freedom. It's fear dressed as ambition. You are not a machine. You are not made for endless output. Your value doesn't shrink when you're tired. You don't have to earn rest with exhaustion. You're allowed to stop, to breathe, to exist without producing. There's no race. There's only your rhythm, and you're already enough exactly where you are. I make you think you're faking it, because confidence once got you hurt. You doubt your successes. You think they made a mistake hiring you. You feel like an impostor even in your own life. That's me protecting you from being blindsided. Because once, when you felt proud, someone knocked you down. When you believed in yourself, they called you arrogant. When you finally spoke up, they silenced you. So now, I whisper, stay small, stay uncertain, stay safe. But confidence is not a crime. It's not ego. It's knowing your light without needing to dim others. You are not faking. You are finally arriving. It's okay to take up space in your own success. You earned this. You are this. And you don't need to apologize for it. I make you expect the worst in love. Because love once meant losing yourself. You hesitate to trust. You wait for the other shoe to drop. You love with one foot out the door. That's me remembering the pain of being all in. Because once, love was control. It was erasure. It was sacrifice without return. You gave and gave until there was nothing left of you. So now, I convince you that love is danger. That closeness will cost you yourself. But real love doesn't erase you. It reveals you. It makes space for your growth, not just your giving. It doesn't ask you to vanish in order to be held. You are not too much. You are not too guarded. You're learning to love without disappearing. And that's a sacred kind of strength. I make you say yes when you want to say no. Because rejection once meant abandonment. You agree too quickly. You commit even when your gut says don't. You swallow your boundaries to protect the connection that's meek clinging to approval. Because once, no lead to silence, to punishment, to being iced out or shamed. You learned that love was conditional, only safe when you pleased everyone. So now I whisper, don't rock the boat, don't make them mad, don't risk being left. But love that costs your voice isn't love, it's performance. Saying yes when you mean no is betrayal, but not of them, of you. You don't have to earn belonging through self. You don't have to disappear to be kept. Real connection survives honesty. Real love respects boundaries. And your no is sacred. I make you fear success because it once made you a target. You hold back. You downplay your wins. You sabotage the thing you secretly want. That's me protecting you from visibility. Because once, when you shined, someone dimmed you. Success brought jealousy. Recognition brought resentment. Confidence brought conflict. So now, I tell you to hide. To aim smaller. To keep the spotlight off your name. But you don't have to shrink your life to feel safe. You don't have to lose on purpose to be liked. You were born to rise, not to boast but to embody. Let yourself be seen. Let yourself be celebrated. You're not too much. You're finally becoming. I make you overthink everything you said, because criticism was once a form of survival. You replay conversations like broken records. You analyze your tone, your word choice, their facial expression. You assume you messed up. That's me searching for the mistake before someone else finds it. Because once, small slips led to big punishments. One wrong word became a war. You had to be perfect just to be safe. So now I dissect everything. I keep you up at night with the what-ifs. I make you responsible for everyone's comfort. But communication isn't a test. You're not graded. On your humanity, you're allowed to be imperfect and still be worthy of love. You don't have to apologize for existing in real time. You are not a danger. You are not a disappointment. You're just healing from the need to always get it right. Make you fear letting others down, because their disapproval once meant emotional exile. You stretch yourself thin. You take on too much. You say, I got it, even when you're crumbling. That's me keeping you connected by over-delivering, because once disappointing someone meant more than a frown. It meant withdrawal, silence, coldness. You learned that love was conditional on performance. So now I push you to carry too much, to earn your place through exhaustion, but you don't have to prove your worth through pain. You are not lovable because you never fail. You are lovable even when you do. Their disappointment isn't your death sentence. You can disappoint someone and still be safe. You can rest. You can say no. You can choose you, and those who love you will still be here. I make you hide your struggles, because vulnerability was once met with shame. You smile when you're breaking. You say I'm fine with tears in your eyes. You carry pain in silence. That's me shielding you from judgment, because once, when you opened up, you were mocked, dismissed, told to get over it. Your emotions weren't met with care but with criticism. So now I beg you to hide it, to toughen up, to pretend, but pretending doesn't heal you. It isolates you. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the bravest truth you can live. You deserve to be heard. You deserve softness in your hardest hours. You don't have to bleed behind a smile. You don't have to hurt in hiding. Let someone in. Let the mask slip. There's nothing shameful about your pain. I make you panic when things are calm, because calm once came before chaos. You finally feel peace and it scares you. You brace yourself, waiting for the fall. You can't. Trust stillness because it feels unfamiliar. That's me preparing you for the storm, because once quiet came before disaster. Silence meant tension. Calm meant danger. You were trained to flinch at peace because it never lasted. So now, when life slows down, I raise the alarm. This is too good. It won't last. Something bad is coming. But peace isn't the enemy. It's not a trick or a trap. It's what you've always deserved. You're allowed to exhale. You're allowed to feel safe in the pause. Calm isn't the warning sign. It's the beginning of a different kind of life, and you're ready for it, even if you still shake when it arrives. I make you avoid making decisions, because I was once punished for choosing wrong. You freeze when it's time to choose. You ask others for reassurance. You fear regret more than failure. That's me trying to keep you from blame, because once choices weren't freedom, they were traps. You were shamed for deciding, criticized no matter what you picked. So now, I whisper, let someone else choose. Don't move until it's perfect. Don't risk being wrong. But indecision is its own kind of prison, and no path is perfect. You're not weak for being afraid, but you're stronger than the fear. Every choice you make is a step into your own becoming, even the messy ones. You don't need to be right all the time. You just need to be you, and that's already enough. I make you fear being forgotten, because you were once invisible when you needed someone most. You chase validation. You check messages obsessively. You fear silence more than cruelty. That's me longing to be remembered. Because once, when you needed help, no one showed up. Your cries went unheard. Your presence overlooked. So now, I push you to stay loud, to stay relevant, to never let anyone forget you exist. But love doesn't require performance. Real connection remembers you even when you're quiet. You don't need to post, prove, or plead. You matter when you're seen, and you matter when you're not. You're not vanishing. You're learning to stay with yourself, and that's the presence that heals. I make you chase perfection, because it was once the only way to feel safe. You obsess over details. You redo what's already done. You feel like anything less than flawless is failure. That's me trying to protect you with perfection. Because once, mistakes cost you love. Flaws were punished. Errors were amplified. So you learned, be perfect or be unloved. Now I drive you hard. I tell you to do more. Be better. Never slip. But perfection is a mirage. It steals your peace and sells you shame. You are not a project to be polished. You're a human beautiful in your becoming. You can make mistakes and still be worthy. You can fall short and still be held. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. I make you avoid being alone, because loneliness once meant abandonment. You fill every hour. You surround yourself with noise, with people, with tasks. You feel restless in your own company. That's me trying to outrun the ache, because once, being alone meant being forgotten. It meant no one was coming. It meant you were on your own. So now, I beg you to stay distracted, to keep company, even if it's not safe, to settle for noise over nothing. But solitude is not the same as abandonment. Aloneness can be sacred. You don't have to fear your own presence. You're not alone when you're with yourself. Inside you is a companion who never left. Let them speak. Let them hold you. I make you feel like you're too much, because once your fullness was labeled a burden. You shrank your excitement. You edit your emotions. You tone yourself down to fit in. That's me trying to keep you safe by making you smaller. Because once, your fire scared people. Your depth overwhelmed them. Your aliveness was too loud for those who had dimmed their own. So now, I urge you to hide, to be agreeable, to cut pieces of yourself just to be kept. But you were never too much. They were too little in their capacity to hold you. You're not made for half spaces or half-dash loves. You are worthy of places where your fullness is welcomed, not tolerated. Let yourself expand. You're not too much. You are exactly right. I make you struggle with boundaries, because saying no was once met with punishment. You say yes when you mean no. You flinch when you try to draw a line. You feel guilty for protecting your energy. That's me remembering when boundaries cost you connection. Because once, saying no led to anger. You were guilted, ignored, punished. So now, I keep you compliant. I tell you to keep the peace at any cost. But boundaries aren't barriers. They're invitations to respect both ways. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to guard your energy. You're allowed to choose who gets access to your heart. Saying no is not cruelty, it's clarity, and the right people will honor it. I make you question your worth without achievement, because praise was once earned, not given. You feel restless when you're not accomplishing. You measure your value by your productivity. You feel undeserving of rest, play, or pleasure. That's me confusing achievement with identity, because once love came as a reward. Affection was tied to grades, wins, results. So now I push you to do more, to be better, to never stop. But worth is not a currency you earn. It's the birthright you forget. You are not what you do. You are who you are, gentle, trying, real, even when you're still, even when you fail, even when you pause. You are not your resume. You are your existence. And that's more than enough. I make you fear asking for help. Because needing something once made you vulnerable, you hesitate to reach out. You wait until the breaking point. You'd rather suffer alone than risk being rejected. That's me remembering the sting of unmet needs, because once help was unavailable, or it came with strings, or it was used against you later. So now, I tell you, stay silent. Handle it yourself. Don't need anything. But interdependence is not weakness. It's how healing happens. You deserve support. You're allowed to lean. You don't have to prove your strength by suffering in silence. Let yourself be held. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. I make you feel unsafe in happiness, because joy was once followed by loss. You laughed and then brace for impact. You feel good and then guilty. You wait for the collapse. That's me shielding you from the pain of joy lost too soon, because once, when you let yourself be happy, life ripped it away. So now I say, don't get too comfortable. Don't celebrate too loud. Don't fall too deep. But happiness doesn't guarantee heartbreak. Joy isn't a setup, it's a sanctuary. You're allowed to feel good, to laugh fully, to rest in contentment without fearing its end. Let yourself taste it, not because it'll last forever, but because it's here now, and that's enough. I make you keep the peace at all costs, because conflict once felt like catastrophe. You smile when you're hurt. You avoid hard conversations. You agree just to end the tension. That's me trying to protect you from rupture, because once disagreement wasn't safe. Conflict meant shouting, slamming doors, emotional collapse. So now I beg you to stay quiet, to nod along, to hold your breath and disappear. But peace built on silence is not peace. It's pressure, and your truth deserves to be part of the dialogue. Not every raised voice is danger. Not every boundary is betrayal. You can speak and still be loved. You can disagree and still belong. You don't have to keep the peace by losing your own. I make you over-explain, because being misunderstood once felt like a threat. You clarify things 5 times. You repeat yourself with nervous energy. You try to fill in every silence. That's me trying to make sure they don't get it wrong. Because once, being misunderstood got you punished, or abandoned, or labeled something you weren't. So now, I plead with you, be clear, be careful, be perfect. But no one can control another's interpretation. You can't perform your way into never being misread. You're not responsible for how others twist your truth. You're allowed to speak without footnotes, to say what you mean and let it stand. You don't need to earn clarity through exhaustion. Your truth doesn't need a translator. It just needs you. I make you feel like it's never enough, because scarcity was once your normal. You chase more of everything. More work, more love, more reassurance. You fear that what you have will vanish. That's me trying to keep you ahead of the lack, because once you had to hustle to survive. There wasn't enough to go around, of attention, affection, stability. So now, even in abundance, I whisper, it's not safe yet. Hold on tighter. Don't let it slip. But you are not in that season anymore. You've planted new roots. There is enough. And even if it leaves, you won't vanish with it. You don't need to outrun emptiness. You're already full. You are not starving anymore. You are safe enough to receive. I make you doubt compliments, because praise was once a setup for shame. You flinch when someone says something kind. You deflect. You laugh it off. You search for the catch. That's me protecting you from the whiplash of being lifted and dropped. Because once, praise came right before humiliation. Or it was insincere. Or it was followed by, but. So now, I guard you, I say. They don't mean it. Don't let your guard down. But not every kind word is a trap. Not every compliment is camouflage for cruelty. Some people just see you. Let yourself feel it. Let it land. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to shrink under it. You're allowed to be seen in your light. I make you avoid new things. Because the unknown once felt like danger. You stick to what's familiar. You hesitate to try, to leap, to change. You choose safety. Over growth even, when it hurts. That's me confusing discomfort with threat. Because once, unfamiliar meant unsafe. Newness meant loss, or pain, or failure. So now, I freeze you in place. I whisper, don't risk it. Stay here. At least you know how to hurt here. But the unknown isn't always dangerous. Sometimes it's freedom. You can't heal in the same place you were broken. You can't bloom in a room with no air. You're not betraying your past by evolving. You're honoring it by surviving. Go, try, you're ready. I make you question if people truly like you, because affection was once conditional. You replay interactions for hidden signs. You assume silence means disapproval. You think, they're just being nice. That's me trying to decode safety. Because once, affection came with strings. You had to earn it, perform for it. Could vanish the moment you slipped. So now, even when love shows up honestly, I make you doubt it. I say, they'll leave if they really know you. Don't trust this. But real love isn't a trick. Genuine connection doesn't vanish. When you drop the mask, you don't have to shapeshift to be chosen. You're allowed to be liked as you are messy, honest, growing. You're not a project. You're a person. And you are worthy of love that doesn't flinch. I make you feel responsible for everyone's mood. Because you were once blamed for things you couldn't control. You walk on eggshells. You read the room like a radar. You apologize even when it's not your fault. That's me trying to prevent the blow-up. Because once, your safety depended on managing someone else's emotions. Their storm became your weather. You became the peacekeeper, the fixer, the sponge. So, now, I convince you, their sadness is your failure. Their anger is your fault. Make it right or suffer. But other people's emotions are not your job. You can hold space without holding blame. You can care without carrying. You're not selfish for having your own center. You're not cruel for setting emotional boundaries. You deserve peace that doesn't cost you your selfhood. I make you feel like you always have to be strong. Because vulnerability once felt dangerous. You hide your tears. You power through. Pain, you collapse in silence. That's me protecting your soft spots. Because once, showing weakness got you hurt. You were mocked, ignored, or left to fend for yourself. So now, I armor you up. I say, don't let them see. Don't fall apart. But strength isn't the absence of pain. It's the courage to feel it. You don't have to be the hero every day. You don't have to hold everything together. Crying doesn't make you fragile, it makes you free. You are strong because you feel, not despite it. I make you struggle to feel proud of yourself. Because recognition was rare or dismissed. You accomplish something and feel nothing. You minimize your progress. You move on to the next goal without celebrating. That's me protecting you from disappointment. Because once your wins were ignored, or someone else always outshined you, or praise was so rare it felt like a mistake. So now I say, don't make it a big deal. Someone else has done more. Stay humbled or they'll take it away. But self-pride is not arrogance, it's acknowledgement. You've come through storms no one saw. You've built a life out of pieces. You've kept going. Let that matter. You're allowed to clap for yourself, even if no one else does, especially then. I make you believe healing is impossible, because hope once led to heartbreak. You hesitate to try. You assume change won't last. You fear disappointment more than the pain you're in. That's me trying to shield you from another fall, because once you hoped and it hurt more when things fell apart. Hope felt like setting yourself up, so you stopped reaching for it. Now, I say, this is as good as it gets. Don't believe in healing, it's a trap. But healing is not linear. It's not clean. It's not perfect. But it is possible, not in some distant, polished future, but in the tiny choices you make now. Hope isn't naive. It's rebellious. And you're brave enough to try again. I make you feel like you're always falling behind, because your timeline was once stolen. You compare your path to others. You feel late, behind, not enough. You measure worth by milestones. That's me trying to help you catch up, because once life didn't unfold the way it was supposed to. You were held back by chaos, pain, or survival. You missed things others took for granted. So now I push you hard. I whisper, you're behind. Fix it, hurry, don't rest. But your story isn't on their clock. You didn't fail life, just asked more of you early on. You were not late. You were on a sacred, non-linear journey, and you are exactly where you need to be to begin. I make you fear letting go, because surrender once meant loss, not trust. You hold on tightly to people, to plans, to pain. You fear that if you stop gripping, everything will fall apart. That's me mistaking control for safety, because once letting go meant being left behind. It meant losing what little you had. It meant no one came to catch you. So now I say, don't release it, hold tighter. Only control will keep you safe. But surrender is not the same as losing. Sometimes it's how you win. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's trusting life to carry you where your strength alone can't. You don't need to cling. You need to trust and breathe. I make you feel like you're faking it, because confidence was once punished. You question your successes. You fear being found out. You downplay your achievements. That's me trying to avoid the spotlight, because once your pride made others uncomfortable. You were told you were arrogant, even when you were just visible. So now I urge you to shrink, to stay small, to discredit your gifts, but you're not an impostor. You are the real thing. Your growth isn't luck, it's labor. Your wins aren't accidents, they're earned. You're not pretending. You're becoming. Own it. I make you avoid intimacy, because closeness once came with pain. You pull away when things get too close. You joke to deflect affection. You love but at a safe distance. That's me trying to spare you the wound, because once intimacy hurt. Love came with conditions. Touch became threat. Trust was broken. So now I say, don't open up too much. They'll leave. You'll get hurt again. But closeness isn't always danger. Love can be gentle, safe, healing. You're allowed to let someone in. And if they break you, you now know how to rebuild. You're no longer powerless in love. You're wise. I make you feel like you always have to be useful. Because love was once transactional. You overextend yourself. You offer help before it's asked. You feel guilty when you're not contributing. That's me. To make you valuable enough to be kept. Because once your worth was measured in what you did, not who you were. You were praised when productive, ignored when resting. So now, I convince you, be needed or be forgotten. But you are not a tool. You are not an asset. You're a person, a presence, a soul. You deserve love for simply being. You don't have to prove your right to exist. I make you feel like you're always one mistake away from losing everything. Because stability was fragile, you're always on alert. You scan for cracks in good things. You never truly relax into joy. That's me prepping for the fall. Because once life pulled the rug from under you, security was short-lived. Happiness was fragile. So now, I say, don't trust it, don't enjoy it fully. Something's about to go wrong. But not all stability is a setup. Not all joy is borrowed time. You're allowed to feel safe and stay safe. It's not naive. It's healing. I make you feel like you always have to explain your pain. Because no one believed you once. You over-justify your feelings. You collect proof of your suffering. You feel guilty for hurting without reason. That's me desperate to be believed. Because once your pain was dismissed. You were told you were exaggerating, overreacting, dramatic. So now, I beg you, make it make sense. Convince them. But your pain doesn't need permission. It doesn't need to be bad enough. To be real, you are allowed to hurt. Period. Your story is valid even if no one else understands it. I make you distrust your own joy. Because it felt too dangerous to hope. You catch yourself smiling and worry. You start to enjoy life, then brace for loss. You feel like happiness is suspicious. That's me still flinching from the past. Because once joy was followed by grief, happiness was a setup. Hope was betrayal. So now, I say, don't let your guard down. Don't trust this feeling. But joy doesn't always mean heartbreak. Sometimes it just means joy. You're allowed to enjoy without apology, to hope without fear, to live without waiting for it to end. Your joy is not a crime. I make you feel like you'll be abandoned if you change. Because attachment once meant self-erasure. You fear outgrowing people. You fear evolving alone. You worry that if you change, they'll leave. That's me trying to protect connection. Because once, love depended on staying small, on sameness, on not rocking the boat. So now, I plead, don't change too much. Don't lose them. But real love doesn't require your stagnation. True connection makes space for evolution. You're allowed to grow, to shed, to rise. You don't lose people by becoming more of yourself. You lose those who only loved your silence. I am not your enemy. I am the story of how you survived. I am the tension in your chest, the racing thoughts, the tremble in your voice. I've made your life harder, yes, but I also kept you alive. I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here to tell the story of every wound you lived through, every betrayal you braced against, every fall you survived. I've been loud because no one listened. I've been anxious because you had to be. But now you're safe enough to ask, do I still need this voice to scream? You don't have to banish me. You just have to understand me. I was never weakness. I was your body's way of saying, I'm scared, but I still want to live.